Class 12 Introducing Sociology Chapter 1 Sociology and Society Introduction. Let us begin with some suggestions that are often made to young students like you. One advice often made is study hard and you will do well in life. The second advice, as often made, is if you do this subject or set of subjects, you will have a better chance of getting a good job in the future. The third could be, as a boy, this does not seem a correct choice of subject. Or, as a girl, do you think your choice of subject is a practical one? The fourth, your family needs you to get a job soon, so why choose a profession that will take a time, very long time? Or you will join your family business. So why do you wish to do this subject? Let us examine the suggestions. Do you think the first advice contradicts the other three? For the first advice suggests that if you work very hard, you will do very well and get a job. The onus rests upon the individual. The second advice suggests that apart from your individual effort, there is a job market that decides which subject choices may increase or decrease your chances in the job market. The third and fourth advice complicate the matter even more. It's not just our personal effort or just the job market that makes a difference. Our gender and family or social background also matter. Individual efforts made a great deal but do not necessarily define outcomes. As we saw, there are other social factors that play an important role in the final outcome. Here we have only mentioned the job market, the socio-economic background, and gender. Can you think of other factors? We could well ask, who decides what is a good job? Do all societies have similar notions of what is a good job? Is money the criteria, or is it respect or social recognition, or individual satisfaction that decides the worth of a job? Do culture and social norms have any role to play? The individual student must study hard to do well, but how well she does is structured by a whole set of societal factors. The job market is defined by the needs of the economy. The needs of the economy are again determined by the economic and political policies pursued by the government. The chances of the individual student are affected both by these broader political and economic measures as well as by the social background of his family. This gives us a preliminary sense of how sociology studies human society as an interconnected whole and how society and the individual interact with each other. The problem of choosing subject in the senior secondary school is a source of personal worry for the individual student. That this is a broader public issue affecting students as a collective entity is self-evident. One of the tasks of sociology to unravel the connection between a personal problem and a public issue. This is the first theme of this chapter. We have already seen that a good job means different things to different societies. The social esteem that a particular kind of job has or does not have for an individual depends on the culture of his/her relevant society. What do we mean by the relevant society? Does it mean the society the individual belongs to? Which society does the individual belong to? Is it the neighborhood? Is it the community? Is it the caste or tribe? Is it the professional circle of the parents? Is it the nation? Second, this chapter therefore looks at how the individual in the modern times belongs to the more than one society and how societies are unequal. Third, this chapter introduces sociology as a systemic study of society, distinct from philosophical and religious reflections, as well as our everyday common sense observation about society. Fourth, this distinct way of studying society can be better understood if we look back historically at the intellectual ideas and material context within which sociology was born and later grew. These ideas and material developments were mainly Western but with global consequences. Fifth, we look at this global aspect and the manner in which sociology emerged in India. It is important to remember that just as each of us have a biography, so does a discipline. Understanding the history of a discipline helps understand the discipline. Finally, the scope of sociology and relationships to other disciplines is discussed. The sociological imagination, the personal problem, and the public issue. We began with a set of suggestions that drew our attention to how the individual and society are dialectically linked. This is a point that sociologists over several generations have been concerned with. C. Wright Mills rests his vision of the sociological imagination precisely in the unraveling of how the personal and public are related. The sociological imagination enables us to grasp history and biography and the relations between the two within society. That is its task and promise. Perhaps the most fruitful distinction with which the sociological imagination work is between the personal troubles of the milieu and the public issue of social structure. Troubles occur within the character of the individual and within the range of his immediate relations with others. They have to do with himself and with those limited areas of social life of which he is directly and personally aware. Issues have to do with matters that transcend these local environments of the individual and the range of his inner life. The facts of contemporary history are also facts about the success and the failure of individual men and women. When a society is industrialized, a peasant becomes a worker, a feudal lord is liquidated or becomes a businessman. When classes rise or fall, a man is employed or unemployed. When the rate of investment goes up or down, a man takes a new hurt or goes broke. When war happens, an insurance salesman became a rocket launcher, a store clerk, a radar man, a wife lives alone, a child grows up without a father. Neither the life of an individual nor the history of a society can be understood without understanding both. Mills, 1959. The Indira Awas Yojana, operationalized from 1999 to 2000, is a major scheme by the government's Ministry of Rural Development MORD and Housing and Urban Development Corporation HUDCO to construct houses free of the cost for the poor and the homeless. Can you think of the other issues that shows the connection between personal problems and public issues? 3. Pluralities and inequalities among societies. In the contemporary world, we belong, in a sense, to more than one society. When amidst foreigner, reference to our society may mean Indian society, but when amongst fellow Indians, we may use the term our society to denote a linguistic or ethnic community, a religious or caste or tribal society. This diversity makes deciding which society we are talking about difficult. But perhaps this difficulty of mapping society is not confined to sociologists alone, as the comment below will show. While reflecting on what to focus on in his films, the great Indian filmmaker Satyajit Ray wondered, what should you put in your films? What can you leave out? Would you leave the city behind and go to the village where cows graze in the endless fields and the shepherds play the flute? You can make a film here that would be pure and fresh and have the delicate rhythm of a boatsman's song. Or would you rather go back in the time way back to the epics where the gods and demons took sides in the great battle where brothers killed brothers? Or would you rather stay where you are, right in the present, in the heart of this monstrous, teeming, bewildering city, and try to orchestrate its dizzying contrast of sight and sound and milieu? This question of what to focus in society is indeed central to sociology. We can take Satyajit Ray's comments further and wonder whether his depiction of village is romantic. It would be interesting to contrast this with a sociologist's account of the Dalit in the village below. The first time I saw him, he was sitting on the dusty road in front of the one small thatched roofed tea shops in the village, with his glass and saucer placed conspicuously beside him. a silent signal to the shopkeeper that an unattachable wanted to buy some tea. Molly was a gaunt 40 years old with beetle blackened teeth who wore his long hair swept back. Freeman, 1978. A quote from Amartya Sen perhaps illustrates well how inequality is central to differences among societies. Some Indians are rich, most are not. Some are very well educated, others are illiterate. Some lead easy lives of luxury, others toil hard for little reward. Some are politically powerful, others cannot influence anything. Some have great opportunities for advancement in life, others lack them altogether. Some are treated with respect by the police, others are treated like dirt. These are different kinds of inequality and each of them requires serious attention. Sen, 2005. Activity 2. The Economic Survey of the Government of India suggests that access to sanitation facilities is 31%. Find out about other indicators of social inequality, for instance, education, health, employment, etc. 4. Introducing sociology. You have already been acquainted with the sociological imagination and the central concern of sociology to study society as an interconnected whole. Our discussion on the individual choices and the job market showed how the economic, political, familial, cultural, educational institutions are interconnected, and how the individual is both constrained by it and yet can change it to an extent. The next few chapters will elaborate on different institutions as well as on culture. It will also focus on some key terms and concepts in sociology that will enable you to understand society. For sociology is the study of human social life, group and societies. Its subject matter is our own behavior as social being. Sociology is not the first subject to do so. People have always observed and reflected upon societies and groups in which they live. This is evident in the writings of philosophers, religious teachers, and legislators of all civilizations and epochs. This human trait to think about our lives and about society is by no means confined to philosophers and social thinkers. All of us do have some ideas about our own everyday life and also about others' lives, about our own society and also about others' society. These are our everyday notions, our common sense in terms of which we live our lives. However, the observation and ideas that sociology as a discipline make about society is different from both that of philosophical reflections and common sense. Observation of philosophical and religious thinkers are often about what is moral or immoral in human behavior, about the desirable way of living, and about a good society. Sociology too concerns itself with norms and values, but its focus is not on norms and values as they ought to be, as goals that people should pursue. Its concern is with the way they function in actual societies. In chapter 3, you will see how sociology of religion is different from a theological study. Empirical study of society is an important part of what sociologists do. This, however, does not mean that sociology is not concerned with values. It only means that when a sociologist studies a society, the sociologist is willing to observe and collect findings, even if they are not to his personal liking. Peter Berger makes an unusual but effective comparison to make the point. In any political or military conflict, it is of advantage to capture the information used by the intelligence organs of the opposite side, but this is only because good intelligence consists of information free of bias. If a spy does her reporting in terms of the ideology and ambitions of her superiors, her reports are useless not only to the enemy, if the latter should capture them, but also the spy's own side. The sociologist is a spy in very much the same way. Her job is to report as accurately as she can about a certain terrain. Berger, 1963. Does this mean that sociologist has no social responsibility to ask about the goals of her study or the work to which the sociological findings will be applied. She has such a responsibility like any other citizen of society. But this asking is not sociological asking. This is like the biologist whose biological knowledge can be employed to heal or kill. This does not mean the biologist is free of responsibility as to which usage he serves. But this is not a biological question. Sociology has from its beginning understood itself as a science. Unlike commonsensical observation or philosophical reflections or theological commentaries, sociology is bound by scientific canons of procedure. It means that the statement that the sociologist arrives at must be arrived at through the observation of certain rules of the evidence that allows others to check on or to report to develop her findings further. There has been considerable debate within sociology about the differences between natural science and human science, between quantitative and qualitative research. We need not enter this here, but what is relevant here is that sociology in its observation and analysis has to follow certain rules that can be checked upon by others. In the next section, we compare sociological knowledge to common sense knowledge, which will once again emphasize the role of methods, procedures, and rules in the manner in which sociology conducts its observation of society. Chapter 5 of this book will provide you with a sense of what sociologists do and how they go about studying society. An elaboration of the differences between sociology and common sense knowledge will help towards a clearer idea of the sociological approach and method. 5. Sociology and common sense knowledge. We have seen how sociological knowledge is different from theological and philosophical observations. Likewise, sociology is different from common sense observations. The common sense explanations are generally based on what may be called naturalistic or individualistic explanation. A naturalistic explanation for behavior rests on the assumption that one can really identify natural reason of behavior. Sociology thus breaks away from both common sense observations and ideas as well as from philosophical thought. It does not always or even generally lead to spectacular results, but meaningful and unsuspected connections can be reached only by sifting through masses of connections. Great advances in sociological knowledge have been made generally, incrementally, and only rarely by a dramatic breakthrough. Sociology has a body of concepts, methods, and data, no matter how loosely coordinated. This cannot be substituted by common sense. Common sense is unreflective since it does not question its own origins, or in other words, it does not ask itself, why do I hold this view? The sociologist must be ready to ask any of our beliefs and about ourselves, no matter how cherished. Is this really so? Both the systematic and questioning approach of sociology is derived from a broader tradition of scientific investigation. This emphasis on scientific procedure can be understood only if we go back in time and understand if the context or social situation within which the sociological perspective emerged as a sociology was greatly influenced by the great developments in modern science. Let us have a very brief look at what intellectual ideas went into the making of sociology. Activity 3. An example of poverty has been given below and also touched upon it in our discussion on the homeless. Think of other issues and how they could be explained in a naturalistic and sociological way. Explanation of poverty, naturalistic. People are poor because they are afraid of work, come from problem families, are unable to budget properly, suffer from low intelligence and shiftlessness. Sociological. Contemporary poverty is caused by the structure of inequality in class society and is experienced by those who suffer from chronic irregularity of work and low wages. Jairam, 1987. Unsuspected connections. In many societies, including in many parts of India, the line of descent and inheritance passes from father to son. This is understood as a patrilineal system Keeping in mind that women tend not to get property rights, the government of India in the aftermath of the Kargil war decided that financial compensation for the death of Indian soldiers should go to their widows so that they were provided for. The government had certainly not anticipated the unintended consequence of this decision. It led to many forced marriages of the widows with their brother-in-law, husband's brother or devar. In some cases, the brother-in-law, then husband, was a young child and the sister-in-law, then wife, a young woman. This was to ensure that the compensation remained with the deceased man's patrilineal family. Can you think of other such unintended consequences of a social action or a state measure? 6. The intellectual ideas that went into the making of sociology. Influenced by scientific theories of natural evolution and findings about pre-modern societies made by early travelers, colonial administrators, sociologists and social anthropologists sought to categorize societies into types and to distinguish stages in social development. These features reappear in the 19th century in the works of early sociologists Auguste Comte, Karl Marx, and Herbert Spencer. Efforts were therefore made to classify different types of societies on that basis. For instance, first, type of pre-modern societies such as hunters and gatherers, pastoral and agrarian and non-industrial civilizations. 2. Types of modern societies such as the industrialized societies. Such an evolutionary vision assumed that the West was necessarily the most advanced and civilized. Non-Western societies were often seen as barbaric and less developed. The Indian colonial experience has to be seen in this light. Indian sociology reflects this tension which go far back to the history of the British colonialism and the intellectual and ideological response to it. Singh 2004. Perhaps of this backdrop, Indian sociology has been particularly thoughtful and reflective of its practice. Chaudhary 2003. You will be engaging with Indian sociological thought, its concerns and practice in greater detail in the book Understanding Society, NCERT 2006. Darwin's ideas about organic evolution were a dominant influence on early sociological thought. Society was often compared with living organisms and efforts were made to trace its growth through the stages comparable to those of organic life. This way of looking at society as a system of parts, each part playing a given function, influenced the study of social institutions like the family or the school and structures such as stratification. We mention this here because the intellectual ideas that went into the making of sociology have a direct bearing on how sociological studies empirical reality. The Enlightenment and European intellectual movement of the late 17th and 18th centuries emphasized reason and individualism. There was also great advancement of scientific knowledge and growing a conviction that the methods of the natural sciences should and could be extended to the study of human affairs. For example, poverty, so far seen as a natural phenomenon, began to be seen as a social problem caused by human ignorance or exploitation. Poverty therefore could be studied and redressed. One way of studying this was through the social survey that was based on the belief that human phenomena can be classified and measured. You will be discussing social survey in chapter 5. Thinkers of the early modern era were convinced that progress in knowledge promised the solution to all social ills. For example, Auguste Comte, the French scholar 1789 to 1857, considered to be the founder of sociology, believed that sociology would contribute to the welfare of humanity. The material issues that went into the making of sociology. The Industrial Revolution was based upon a new, dynamic form of economic activity, capitalism. This system of capitalism became the driving force behind the growth of industrial manufacturing. Capitalism involves new attitudes and institutions. entrepreneurs now engaged in the sustained systematic pursuit of profit. The markets acted as the key instrument of productive life, and goods, services, and labor became commodities whose use was determined by rational calculation. The new economy was completely different from what it replaced. England was the center of the Industrial Revolution. In order to understand how far reaching the change industrialization brought about was, we take a quick at what life in pre-industrial England was like. Before industrialization, agriculture and textiles were the chief occupations of the British. Most people lived in villages. Like in our own Indian villages, there were peasants and landlords, the blacksmith and leather worker, the weaver and the potter, the shepherd and the brewer. Society was small, it was hierarchical, that is, the status and class positions of different people were clearly defined. Like all traditional societies, it was also characterized by the close interaction. With industrialization, each of these features changed. One of the most fundamental aspects of the new order was the degradation of labor, the wrenching of work from the protective context of the guild, village, and family. Both the radical and conservative thinkers were appalled at the decline of the status of the common laborer, not to mention the skilled craftsman. Urban centers expanded and grew. It was not that there were no cities earlier, but their character prior to industrialization was different. The industrial cities gave birth to a completely new kind of urban world. It was marked by the soot and grime of factories, by overcrowded slums of the new industrial working class, bad sanitation, and general squalor. It was also marked by new kinds of social interactions. The Hindi film song on the next page captures both the material as well as the experiential aspect of city life from the film CID 1956. ऐ दिल है मुश्किल जीना यहाँ, जरा हटके जरा बच के, ये है मुंबई मेरी जान. Paraphrase: Dear heart, life is hard here. You must watch where you are going if you want to save yourself. This is Bombay, my dear. You will find buildings, you will find trams, you will find motors, you will find mills, you will find everything here except a human heart. There is no trace of humanity here. So much of what is done here is meaningless. It is either power or it's money, or it's theft or it's cheating. The rich mock the homeless as vagabonds, but when they cut each other's throats themselves, it is called business. The same action is given various names in this place. Activity 4. Note how quickly Britain, the seat of the industrialized revolution, became an urban from a predominantly rural society. Was this process identical in India? 1810, 20% of the population lived in towns and cities. 1910, 80% of the population lived in towns and cities. Significantly, the impact of the same processes was different in India. Urban centers did grow, but with the entry of British manufactured goods, more people moved into agriculture. The mass of Indian handicraftsmen, ruined as a result of the influx of manufactured machine-made goods of British industries, were not absorbed in any extensively developed indigenous industries. Ruined mass of those handicraftsmen in the main took to agriculture for subsistence. Desai, 1975. The factory and its mechanical division of labor were often seen as a deliberate attempt to destroy the peasant, artisan, as well as family and local community. The factory was perceived as an archetype of an economic regimentation hitherto known only in barracks and prisons. According to Karl Marx, the factory was oppressive yet potentially liberating. Here workers learned both collective functioning as well as concerted efforts for better conditions. Another indicator of the emergence of modern societies was the new significance of clock time as a basis of social organization. A crucial aspect of this was the way in which, in the 18th and 19th centuries, The tempo of agricultural and manufacturing labor increasingly came to be set by the clock and calendar in a way very different from the pre-modern forms of work. Prior to the development of industrial capitalism, work rhythms were set by factors such as the period of daylight, the break between tasks, and the constraint of deadlines or other social duties. Factory production implied this synchronization of labor. It began punctually, had a steady pace, and took place for set hours and on particular days of the week. In addition, the clock injected a new urgency to work. For both employer and employee, time is now money. It is not past but spent. Activity 5. Find out how work is organized in a traditional village, a factory, and a call center. Activity 6. Find out how industrial capitalism changed Indian lives in village and cities. Why should we study the beginning and growth of sociology in Europe? Most of the issues and concerns of sociology also date back to a time when European society was undergoing tumultuous changes in the 18th and 19th centuries with the advent of capitalism and industrialization. Many of the issues that were raised then, for example, urbanization or factory production, are pertinent to all modern societies even though their specific features may vary. Indeed, Indian society with its colonial past and the incredible diversity is distinct. The sociology of India reflects this. If this is so, why focus on Europe of that time? Why is it relevant to start there? The answer is relatively simple. For our past, as Indians are closely linked to the history of British capitalism and colonialism, capitalism in the West entailed a worldwide expansion. The passage in the box on next page represent but two strands in the manner that Western capitalism impacted the world. R.A. K. Lakshman's travelogue of Mauritius bring home the presence of this colonial and global past. Here Africans and Chinese, Biharis and Dutch, Persians and Tamils, Arab, French and English all rub merrily with one another. A Tamil, for instance, bear a deceptively South Indian face and a name to go with it to boot. Radha Krishna Govindam is indeed from Madras. I speak to him in Tamil. He surprises me by responding in a frightfully mangled English with a heavy French accent. Mr. Govindan was no knowledge of Tamil and his tongue had ceased curling to produce Tamil sounds centuries ago. Lakshman 2003. Capitalism and its global but uneven transformation of societies. Between the 17th and 19th century, as estimated, 24 million Africans were enslaved. 11 million of them survived the journey to the Americas in one of a number of great movements of population that features in modern history. They were plucked from their existing homes and cultures, transported around the world in appalling conditions, and put to work in the service of capitalism. Enslavement is a graphic example of how people were caught up in the development of modernity against their will. The institution of slavery declined in the 1800s, but for us in India it was in the 1800s that indentured labor was taken in ships by the British for running their cotton and sugar plantations in the distant lands such as Suriname in South America or in the West Indies or the Fiji Islands. V.S. Naipaul, the great English writer who won the Nobel Prize, is a descendant of one of these thousands who were taken to the lands they had never seen and who died without being able to return. 9. The growth of sociology in India. Colonialism was an essential part of modern capitalism and industrialization. The writing of Western sociologists on capitalism and other aspects of modern society are therefore relevant for understanding social change in India. Yet, as we saw with reference to urbanization, colonialism implied that the impact of industrialization in India was not necessarily the same as in the West. Karl Marx comments on the impact of the East India Company bring out of the contrast. India, the great workshop of cotton manufacture for the world, since immemorial times now became the inundated with English tweets and twists, and cotton stuffs after its own produce had been excluded from England or only admitted on the most cruel terms. British manufacturers were poured into it a small and merely nominal duty, to the ruin of the native cotton fabrics once so celebrated. Marx 1853 cited in Desai 1975. Sociology in India also had to deal with Western writings and ideas about Indian society that were not always correct. These ideas were expressed both in accounts of colonial officials as well as Western scholars. For many of them, Indian society was a contrast to Western society. We just take one example here, the way the Indian village were understood and portrayed as unchanging. In keeping with contemporary Victorian evolutionary ideas, Western writers saw in the Indian village a remnant or survival from what was called the infancy of society. They saw in 19th century India the past of the European society. Yet another evidence of the colonial heritage of countries like India is the distinction often made between sociology and social anthropology. A standard Western textbook definition of sociology is the study of human groups and societies, giving particular emphasis to the analysis of the industrialized world. Giddens 2001. A standard Western definition of social anthropology would be the study of simple societies of non-Western and therefore other cultures. In India, the story is quite different. M.N. Srinivas maps the trajectory. In a country such as India, with its size and diversity, regional, linguistic, religious, sectarian, ethnic, including caste, and between rural and urban areas, there are a myriad others. In a culture and society such as India's, the other can be encountered literally next door. Srinivas. Furthermore, social anthropology in India moved gradually from a preoccupation with the study of primitive people to the study of peasants, ethnic groups, social classes, aspects and features of ancient civilizations and modern industrial societies. No rigid divide exists between sociology and social anthropology in India. Characteristic feature of the two subjects in many Western countries, perhaps the very diversity of the modern and traditional, of the village and the metropolitan in India accounts for this. 10. The scope of sociology and its relationship to other social science disciplines. The scope of sociological study is extremely wide. It can focus its analysis of meaningful interactions between individuals, such as that of a shopkeeper with a